Thatcher, why, when the Belgrano, the Argentinian battleship, was outside the exclusion zone and actually sailing away from the Falklands, why did you give the orders to sink it?
But it was not sailing away from the Falklands. It was in an area which was a danger to our ships and to our people on them.
Outside the exclusion zone?
But it was in an area which we had warned. At the end of April, we had given warnings that all ships in those areas, if they represented a danger to our ships, were vulnerable. When it was sunk, that ship which we had found was a danger to our ships. My duty was to look after our troops, our ships, our navy. And my goodness me, I lived with many, many anxious days and nights.
Mrs. Thatcher, you started your answer by saying it was not sailing away from the Falklands. It was on a bearing of 280, and it was already west of the Falklands. So I'm sorry, but I cannot see how you can say it was not sailing away from the Falklands.
When it was sunk.
When it was sunk.
It was a danger to our ships.
No, but you have just said at the beginning of your answer that it was not sailing away from the Falklands, and I'm asking you to correct that statement.
But it's within an area outside the exclusion zone, which I think what you are saying is sailing away.
I think we're arguing about which way it was facing at the time.
Danger to our ships.
Mrs. Thatcher, I am saying that it was on a bearing 280, which is a bearing just north of west. It was already west of the Falklands, and therefore nobody with any imagination can put it sailing other than away from the Falklands.
I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
Mrs. Gould.
Mrs. Gould. When the orders were given to sink it, and when it was sunk, it was in an area which was a danger to our ships.
Well,
now, you accept that, do you?
No,
well,
I don't.
I'm sorry it was, and you must accept that
Mrs.
when we
Thatcher,
gave the order, when we changed the rules which enabled them to sink Belgrano, the change of rules had been notified at the end of April. It was all published that any ships that were a danger to ours within a certain zone wider than the Falklands were likely to be sunk. And again, I do say to you, my duty, and I'm very proud that we put it this way and adhered to it, was to protect the lives of the people in our ships and the enormous numbers of troops that we had down there waiting for landings. I put that duty first. And when the Belgrano was sunk, and I ask you to accept this, she was in a position which was a danger to our navy.
Mrs. Gould, let me ask you this, Mrs. Gould. What motive are you seeking to attach to Mrs. Thatcher and her government in this? Is it inefficiency, lack of communication, or is it a desire for action, a desire for war?
It is a desire for action and a lack of communications, because on giving those orders to sink the Belgrano, when it was actually sailing away from our fleet and away from the Falklands, was in effect sabotaging any possibility of any peace plan succeeding. And Mrs. Thatcher had 14 hours in which to consider the Peruvian peace plan that was being put forward to her, in which those 14 hours, those orders could have been rescinded.
Right, Mrs. Thatcher.
One day, all of the facts, in about 30 years' time, will be published.
That is not good enough, Mrs. Thatcher.
I am just...
Mrs. Gould,
would you
let
please
Mrs. Thatcher answer.
let me answer?
You've put a fair point.
Would you please let me answer? I lived with the responsibility for a very long time. I answered the question giving the facts, not anyone's opinions, but the facts. Those Peruvian peace proposals, which were only in outline, did not reach London until after the attack on the Belgrano. That is fact. I'm sorry, that is fact, and I am going to finish. Did not reach London until after the attack on the Belgrano. Moreover, we went on negotiating for another fortnight after that attack. I think it could only be in Britain that a Prime Minister was accused of sinking an enemy ship that was a danger to our navy, when my main motive was to protect the boys in our Navy. That was my main motive, and I'm very proud of it.
Mrs. Gould,
One day all the facts will be revealed, and they will indicate, as I have said.
Mrs. Gould, have you got a new point to make? Otherwise I must move
just
on.
one point. I understood that the Peruvian peace plans on a nationwide programme were discussed on the midnight May the 1st. If that outline did not reach London for another
Mrs.
14
Thatcher has said
hours,
that it didn't.
I think there must be something very seriously wrong with our communications, and we are living in a nuclear age when we're going to have minutes to make decisions, not hours.
Let's
I
move
have
on.
indicated what the facts are, and would you accept that I am in a position to know exactly when they reached London, exactly when the attack was made? But I repeat, the job of the Prime Minister is to protect the lives of our boys on our ships.
Let's move
And
on
I'm
to
proud that
discuss
that's what I
that
did.
nuclear age, Mrs. Thatcher, if we can, because we've got a lot of questions on defence, as you might imagine.